classes that are not using AI at all and are sticking with kind of the older methods, the level of engagement is dropping rapidly.
Hey, and this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking, and some associated areas, as you will see today, who help us to multiply retention and engagement. I'm Rob Alvarez. I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, and I'm the founder of Professor Game, and I'm also a professor of gamification and game-based solutions at IE Business School, EFMD, EBS University, and many other places around the world. And before we dive directly into the interview with Matt, if you're struggling with retention and churn in your business and are looking for ways to find out how to make them stick for the long run, you will find our free resources very useful. So go to the description, click on the link, and get them right now. Yes, engagers, we have Matt, the Overnight AI Educator, with us today. So Matt, however you want us to call you, are you prepared to engage?
Matt's fine, and I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Let's do this. Today we have Matt Metzgar. He's Dr. Matt Metzgar, PhD, a clinical professor of economics at UNC Charlotte's Belk College of Business, and an award-winning teacher who develops and delivers undergraduate and MBA courses focused on real-world applications and innovative pedagogy. He's the author of a new book, The Overnight AI Educator, Transform Your Course in 24 Hours, Bold and Amazing Promise, by the way. His research spans the effectiveness of teaching methods and the economics of obesity, and as a Gambrell Faculty Fellow, he is leading study on employee ownership's impact on the racial wealth gap in the Charlotte region. He co-chairs the Heterodox Academy Campus Community, facilitates the Constructive Dialogue faculty learning community, and has been interviewed on labor market shortages at both local and national levels. He earned his PhD from the University of Tennessee and an MBA from Wheeling Jesuit. I know how to say it in Spanish, but I'm not sure in English now that I read this.
Jesuit, yes.
And he has a BS from West Virginia University. Matt, is there anything that we're missing that we should know before we dive right into all those amazing experiences you have?
No, just thanks for the opportunity to be on here. I'm very happy and excited to share what I've learned here.
Amazing. So, engagers, as you probably have realized, we have had, we've started to drip more and more into AI lately. I've done things myself. I've had guests who have done a couple of things here and there. But as far as I can remember, at least, we haven't had somebody like fully focused on AI before, right? So classroom economist turned AI educator, right? That's a way that we can maybe phrase a bit, like in a few words, what your journey has been to this point. So the big thing, and one of the things that attracted me very, very quickly was that hook, that bold promise that you have. Like, what would you do if you could redesign your course syllabus assessment in just 24 hours using AI? That's amazing, right? So the first thing is, Matt, how did you even come to something as bold as, completely shifting a course in 24 hours, which I know nobody does a 24-hour day usually. So let's say you do it over 3 working days, 8 hours a day. That still works and is amazing, right? So I don't know, like, how does that even get to start?
Well, AI has really shifted almost all aspects of what I'm doing teaching-wise and many other professors. And some professors are maybe a little slow, kind of dragging their feet into this AI revolution, if you want to call it. And so part of it is I think they're overestimating how much they would have to do to kind of get their courses adapted to the current AI world. And so, I've been to conferences and presented on this, and, a lot of people say, well, it sounds like a lot of work, and, I don't know if I want to change. I wanted to kind of develop a process where it can be, quick and they can get results fast to help them get some momentum going and kind of get into this new, era we're in with education. And so, if you say, well, this is going to take 3 or 6 months, a lot of faculty aren't interested. Also, the majority of faculty, if you look at statistics, are actually work part-time in some way. They're part-time faculty. And so if you're working a regular job, right, and now you're teaching at night or adjunct or whenever, and now they're asking you, oh, by the way, integrate AI into your course. Well, where am I going to fit in that? And so I'm trying to help the faculty make that transition quickly and give them some optimism, some hope, because really with the tools, you can transform a course very quickly. The tools are great and they can really facilitate a fast process.
That makes 100% sense. And I can definitely relate to that as, being myself there. I do have a couple of questions. Like when you talk about adapting it for the age of AI, and maybe you can say all of those things, but I would ask you, what do you exactly mean? Like, does that mean because that's one of the tendencies. You're proofing your classes against AI cheating, right? That's one big topic we tend to have. Like, what's up with cheating nowadays? Or is it, how do you use AI so that students, now with this whole AI, they're able to use AI tools into your course? Or I don't know, something else, a mix of these. Like, what does it actually look like? If you were to describe what does those methods get you for as an educator, what does that actually look like?
Yeah, and I think one of the issues is that if faculty try to do this a little bit piecemeal, like add in this part of AI and this part of AI without thinking through it and going through kind of a clear process, you end up with like a little bit of a Frankenstein situation. Like you could say, well, I could, as a professor, I can use AI to generate some tests, right? Some multiple choice questions and give that to my students. Okay, you can, but are the students allowed to use AI to answer those questions? If so, they can answer them in 10 seconds, and if not, you're blocking your students from using AI, which is something they're going to need to do in the workplace. And so, again, in my mind, it's a whole, redevelopment of the course as far as the way you're looking at it. You should look at, okay, what are the end results that we want for the students? What sort of assessments, lend themselves to that? Then design what sort of learning experiences, teaching, and so on and so forth with that. And then roll it out and see what feedback you get from the students, all that. And then, make an improvement. And then kind of next semester, next term, roll it out again. But it needs to be, I think, a thorough or comprehensive process that if you just try a little bit here and there, a little bit there, it's not going to get the results that everyone wants.
So you're actually trying to make it as a whole rethink of how the courses work, right?
It is. And I would say the linchpin a lot of professors get stuck on is the assessment part. Because, if you have bigger classes and, you're used to giving multiple choice tests, either in person or online, if you give them online now, that's totally gameable, so to speak. Students can easily answer those questions. And then if you give them in class in some sort of Scantron sheet or whatever, where they can't use any resources, then it may be you avoid the cheating, but now you're blocking them from using any realistic resources that they're going to be using in the workplace. And so without changing that piece, the other pieces don't make any sense. But that piece, in my view, has to change. And it's not just because I think so. It's really what the employers are demanding. We had our board of advisors come in, and these are all leaders from big companies in Charlotte. And so I asked, are you guys using AI? Do you want our graduates to be able to use AI? And they said 100% yes. Every company said, yes, we're using it. We want students to be exposed to it as an undergrad. We want them to know how to use it in the right way, not just for cheating or copy and pasting questions, but to use it as a tool to increase productivity, right? To create, in my case, business results. So that's what's being demanded in the workplace. So it's not just like a personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
That's what companies are looking for. And so we as educators have to deliver that in the terms of our curriculum we give to students.
Interesting. And in your experience, in your, in GIST, like, what does assessment look like? What does fundamentally changes in terms of assessments with AI, or what are some best practices perhaps that you see in that sense?
It's a big step because, a lot of the convenience of, online test or multiple choice test or whatever have to be swapped out for some sort of open-ended task, because if it's any closed-ended question and they can use AI tools, they can get that answer, whether it's, come up with this number or a multiple choice, whatever, it's totally gone. You then have to switch to open-ended tasks, which then will require some level of manual grading. And so that's where a lot of professors get stuck on. But in my book, again, I talk about strategies to try to make that more manageable. But as far as like examples, I'm teaching right now in the summer. And so one of my tasks was to come up for a new product for a fast food restaurant, right? And so students would come up with this idea, and then they'd survey some students, other students, how much would you be willing to pay for this new item? And then they can create a demand curve from that, and then maybe make a forecast about maybe how many items would sell. And so it's a realistic task. It's not just like, if demand is this and the price is this, how much quantity, right? Like a calculation question that AI can do. It's like a real task that you may do in the workplace, depending what sort of job you're in. And so those are the type of things I'm giving to students. And I've got a lot of good feedback too, because I feel like the students now are aware that those type of things they could potentially be doing in the workplace. And some of these older closed form of assessments are not relevant anymore.
So I just have two questions there, very, very distinct from each other. Like the first one is, you mentioned earlier that, you were running away from, what's the answer? What's the number to this? Or out of these four options, which is the best one? I completely get it. Like, don't get me wrong. We still have to use them every now and then when I'm teaching, but I completely get it. The only doubt that comes up is the fact that a question is open-ended does not mean that students will not try to answer it with AI. And at least as far as I've seen, and I've validated this in multiple occasions, but you might have a different answer with your expertise, is there's no way to actually catch somebody just copy pasting AI, right? There's no way. And there's even AI to humanize text and make, intentional mistakes. And, that like there's literally stuff to do that. So the only problem it brings up to me is you do that and trust a bit more that they'll be thinking, and the problem is they're not. Which is, as you were saying before, for me it's about them thinking and doing the tasks they will realistically be doing in the work. That does not exclude, sort of open-ended questions does not really exclude them trying to game the system that way. So that's one thing. And the other one is this is just going to be a curiosity, I think, for you, is I recently interviewed Amy Jo Kim, and one of the things that she's developed a software for using AI is to create synthetic personas. So you're basically creating a bot to behave like the person you're targeting in the market. Of course, she stressed, and I completely agree, that this does not substitute entirely a user research. You still have to eventually talk to the right people and so on. But it does give you an advantage. The interviews can be more meaningful. You can know more things when you get to the interview and have better hypotheses and so on. But then you can even use these personas as well. You have to go and do user research. I create a persona with AI, which is already a lot of work. But that's still something that can happen. But again, that's just a curiosity. I don't know. What are your thoughts, your reactions to these two things?
Well, yeah. One, I definitely encourage my students to use AI in these tasks, because again, that's what I'm trying to do. But as far as the cheating and all that, definitely there's no way to tell for sure if they've used AI, but you'd be surprised a lot of times if they're using AI or whatever, they're still, well, let me say it this way, a complete product, at least in business, usually some, like a person kind of has to, look through it and make sure it's all accurate before they would like put it out.
Oh, yeah.
Like if AI wrote a blog post for you, before you just hit publish, right, you would look through it, make sure it made sense and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if they want to use it as a, thinking partner and get ideas going, that's okay. But
Agreed.
They still have that role of making sure it actually makes sense. And so I'll give you an example. Like in that survey example I gave you, some students would submit a demand curve that slopes up in their graph, when demand curves in economics always slope down. As price goes down, quantity goes up. And so it just doesn't make any sense. And so like if you presented that in a business world, you would look foolish, because you'd say, well, that's not true. It's not even possible. Mm-hmm, and so whether they used AI or didn't, it's still testing their knowledge to evaluate, right, whether that product they're putting forth is still true. The other thing I'd say too is that, jobs like a job for like a pricing analyst, it's like AI hasn't eliminated that job. I looked just this week, there's still those jobs out there. Now you may use AI tools, but if you're hired as a pricing analyst, your reputation, your judgment is going to be what's really being evaluated, whether you use these tools or didn't tools, whatever. As long as you produce good results for the company, however you became by them, right, is really what's going to be the ultimate decision about whether you're doing well for that company or not. And so I think the judgment part is really the key in these tasks to make sure it all makes sense, it's logical, it's put together, and so on and so forth. And I'll also say real quick that a task I gave last semester, I created one about Facebook and like a kind of a competition scenario and stuff like that. And I ran it through ChatGPT myself to see, okay, what would ChatGPT do with this assignment? And so I had that. No student group submitted the exact output from ChatGPT in that task. So even though they could have, nobody did. And again, I think it's because they feel there's some value in that task. And so it's like, in my case, they're short too, that let's just give it a try. I'd like to try this and see if I can do it, rather than just, if it's a useless task, then just roll it through ChatGPT and paste the answer in there. So I was kind of surprised by that, because I was like, well, let's see what ChatGPT would answer, and then look through my student answers, and none of them were the same as that ChatGPT answer.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I agree. ChatGPT can answer with the exact same context, can answer different things at the same time. I mean, it's like a human. It's not exactly predictable. Like, it's not an algorithm like other. Like in the past, that's one of the things that was changed totally, the products in the AI world. But anyways, I love that. Like, I love the perspective of actually getting them to do things that are useful, no matter if it's AI or not. That places the onus on us as educators to see how we can place a task that, quote unquote, forces them into thinking, but then also AI is moving very, very fast. So it is an interesting thing to keep up to as educators, for sure. Very quickly, I know you have, I think it's a 5-step framework. Is that right?
That's right.
Can you run us through what those steps are, and how does it look for someone who's not techie, so to speak?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And I try to, make the cycle knowing that these tools, like you said, are changing so rapidly. So I didn't try to tie it to, okay, you have to use this tool for that and this tool for that. And so it's more of, again, just like a cycle someone could run after, every semester or term. But the first step is really trying to look at, as I mentioned, what are the current skills in demand for the workforce or in the organization, society, however whatever kind of your program's leading to. But what actually skills are out there? And so, like, you can, for my case, I can go to ChatGPT and put, someone graduates with a BS in economics, scan the current job ads and pull out, the top 7 or 8 skills that are in demand right now, the companies that are hiring today. What are they looking for? And so all this is, give credit to Grant Wiggins. It's the concept of backwards design. And so he had a book, Understanding by Design. I was a big fan of his work. It's trying to start with the end goal in mind. And so for my case, I'm trying to help students become business professionals. So that's the end goal for them, is to graduate and work in that business world. So I say, okay, well, what's the business world looking for? What skills do you need? And if you're an econ major, finance major, whatever. So you start with those job skills, and that's the first step. And then the second step is, now let's build assessment tasks that would help you build skills for those specific, job functions. And so again, if you're going to be hired as a pricing analyst, one of the things is you're going to have to forecast how many units we're going to need of this next month. Okay, well, now I can build a task like that, where you try to forecast inventory levels or sales or whatever it is. So first step is the current job skills or societal skills, however you think of it. The second is building those tasks. And then the third piece is, now let's build those learner experiences, resources, and everything else to help students learn how to do that, right? Now, obviously, classroom instruction is a big part of it, but AI is now making these tools so much easier. Like you talked about digital, avatar, so to speak, but you can have, you can create like a digital twin of yourself to lecture now. I don't know if you heard of this. It's Heygen, HEYGEN.com. Like it can record snippets of video, and then you just upload like a script in Word, and now it'll make a video of you saying that script without you having to say it. And something even cooler is that it can actually translate and have you speak in different languages. So I could upload a script to me talking about pricing and have it translate to Spanish for me. And there's a video of me now speaking about this topic in Spanish. And I didn't do any of it. I just uploaded the script and some video. And so AI can create so many resources, whether it's video, audio podcast. Google has audio overviews. It can create a podcast of people talking about that topic. It's all AI generated. So, videos, notes, diagrams, whatever you want, right? AI can rapidly cut the time needed to develop those resources. So that's the third step. And then the fourth step is trying to figure out what sort of feedback you can give. And so, like we were talking, if we have big classes, so how do you grade all those open-ended assignments? And so you have to think about how often can you give feedback? Because sometimes if you give feedback earlier in the process, so to speak, it can reduce the amount of grading later on. Because like if a bunch of groups are making a mistake, you can then beam this out, hey, don't do this. So that when it's submitted, I don't have to fix that mistake 30 times or whatever it is. So you got to think about your feedback strategy, trying to be efficient with it, because no one has unlimited time and energy to give feedback all the time to all students. It would be great if we could, but there's just constraints you have to think about. And so in my book, one of the things I talk about is trying to develop simplified rubrics. And I mean very simplified rubrics, as far as almost like checklists for, are these pieces here, yes or no? So if you have hundreds of students like I do, even if they work in groups, it's still big numbers, but you can get a simplified rubric that can really cut down the workload. And so that's step 4. And then the 5th step is just to survey your students, look at evaluations, get feedback, ask questions, and just kind of like an adaptive cycle. You want to next time iterate and make any improvements you can. What can you fix for next time? But I mean, going through this cycle just once can take a course that's hasn't been updated in 20 years to, it's current in good shape, using good tools quickly. And then after that, the iteration cycles, the improvements will be potentially smaller. It's more like small fixes.
Sounds amazing. And talking about those fixes and what you've seen, those are the 5 steps to actually reach this. By following this, or the people that you've helped doing this, like in your experience or the experienced people you've helped as well, have you seen any changes so far as the engagement in those AI-assisted course designs? Are students more engaged in those classes? Is it kind of the same? Have you observed something in those terms?
Yes, and I would say it's actually the opposite is becoming even more apparent. Classes that are not using AI at all and are sticking with kind of the older methods, the level of engagement is dropping rapidly. And so, it's almost like, you can make it better and that's good, but if you don't, it's going to be really bad. I was just talking with a professor a couple of weeks ago, and he just said that, he kind of went with the old school model, and he's like, engagement this semester was the worst ever. He just said students just totally checked out, that they, again, they're sensing this stuff's just not relevant. It's not, what's actually happening. And then again, on the other side, I talked with probably 10 or 12 professors this semester that, they said the students are excited. They want to learn. The students want to learn these tools, in the right way. I mean, yeah, you could, again, use it for cheating or whatever, but they know it's out there. You look at workforce surveys, 80% of, employees are already using AI. And that's even an old figure. It's probably higher than that. So they know it's there, and they're using it themselves. 80% of students already use AI. And so it's all about just kind of getting it up to the current standard, so to speak, about what's happening in the world.
Totally. With your experience, I know this is all new. Many things are changing. There's a lot of shifts. By any chance, have you seen anybody sort of these strategies that you talk about to perhaps turn the classroom into something a little bit more fun, more playful, more interactive, more engaging? And if so, what has that looked like? Or maybe it's your own experience, something that you have done yourself.
Yeah, and I know the gaming is a big element of the podcast and all that, and I've done a little bit of that in the past. I definitely wouldn't consider myself an expert or anything like that on that area, but I definitely think there's room for that, for those game elements. As far as leaderboards or competitions or things like that. I mean, I think there's probably a ton of really good ideas out there that you would have more than me on this as to, what they could be and how they could kind of be fused with AI. But
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an element for that age group. I remember even college football, like a coach was saying, hey, we got to make this fun. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids. It can't be all business all the time. And so definitely there's a role for that for sure.
Totally. If I were to, like, I know it's a 5-step process, and the way, and I know the way processes work in general. I'm an operations professor, so I can't run away from processes in any way, right? But is there one thing that you could tell the audience, we're on the fence, and say, like, look, try this thing, and of course not disconnected or anything, but try this thing and see how it goes. Like, see how you feel, maybe how it helped you, or whatever. Is there a thing that they could do that at least probably help them dip their toes in this direction?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'd just say, the first step is just, you could, replace one assignment you have, a regular assignment, and just make it an AI assignment and just try it, even if you want to make it a small portion of the overall course grade or something like that, just to say, okay, we're going to take this out and instead, put in an assignment where you can use AI and just see how it goes, and they could test, see what sort of assignment they would have to design, from a teacher standpoint. And then that would force them to think about, okay, how am I going to assess it? And then just roll it out, I mean, like I was at a conference and someone did this in marketing, and they just said, all right, now the final deliverable, like a marketing campaign, now we just open it up and you can use whatever AI tools you want to help create, logos and graphics and the copy and everything else. And so it totally transformed that assignment from just being something where they would just write something and check for plagiarism to an open-ended thing where they could use all these tools and create a way better product. That's the ultimate goal from my thinking, is that you're trying to make people more productive, add more value to those organizations. And these tools are amazing. They can help people, workers become more productive, create more value. And so, it ends up being a win-win if you open up to that.
Absolutely. And of course, this is sort of looking into the future, and that, crystal ball kind of thing that I always say, like, I can't look into the future when they ask these kind of questions, but, maybe you have an answer, maybe you have a view on this. Where do you see this going next? Is it AI is going to replace or augment creativity in course design and in general creating, some of the things that educators are great at doing, or at least were great at doing before this whole thing happened?
Definitely. It's a great question. And what I think really is happening very quickly is the professor used to be maybe more of kind of like the dispenser of knowledge and the holder of knowledge. And now all that knowledge is out there in AI. And so what's interesting about these tasks I give is that, okay, I'll publish a task on Monday. And I'll say over the next 2 weeks during, lecture class, I'll show you how to do it. Well, by Tuesday, I'm getting emails asking me about like step number 7. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, I haven't even said anything yet. I haven't even had a class yet on this, And so they're just moving ahead. Like, they don't need professors, so to speak, in the same way to dispense that knowledge. They can go right to ChatGPT and have a conversation, tell me about price elasticity, back and forth, right? And that the studies show it can be as effective or more than just a regular lecture. And so it's really shifted the role of the professor from the dispenser of knowledge to actually more of an evaluator. And that took me a little while to wrap my head around, because, again, I'm sure like you, I mean, I got into teaching because I liked being in the classroom and explaining things and working with students. But unfortunately, I think the demand for that's falling and will continue to fall in the future. And now it's more on the other end where you're really just an evaluator. And I was talking with actually an art professor about this, and she said the main function they do for art school now is evaluation. They said it's not really even teaching people how to draw or how to watercolor. She's like, they can go on YouTube. There's 1 million videos on how to watercolor. And so for them, they can teach it, yeah, but they're just one of 1 million voices. And they said the only reason for a student to go to art school is to have their work critiqued by an art professor, an actual human. That's it. That's the only reason to go, because all the how-to is out there. And so it's the same with this, explaining and all that. It's already out there. So I think it's really about the judgment piece. You're trying to help students say, look, this is, a good product, that you've created that would look good in a business, or it's not, or has these weaknesses. And so I'm just telling you that, as someone who's worked in business and understands the subject, that, this is kind of up to par or it's not. But I really feel that's what my role's shifting into, and it'll be even more of that going forward. And unfortunately, the teaching part, I think, is shrinking, for better or for worse. I had to grieve over that, but I'm just trying to be as honest as I can.
Totally. So Matt, where can we learn more about you? Tell us about your book, your site, wherever you want to guide us at this point.
Sure, yeah. The website is overnight.education, and the book is out on Amazon, the Overnight AI Educator, how college faculty can transform their course in 24 hours. And yeah, I'm hoping to, again, to work with any interested individuals, or I'll probably do some sort of LinkedIn webinar as the school year gets closer in August, try to spread the word. But really just looking to help people make this transition, because it's needed, and there's a lot of energy. A lot of people see what's happening and they want to be part of this kind of wave and again, be in better positions to help students.
Absolutely. Love that. And Matt, thank you very much for coming here, for giving us, a significant portion of that knowledge, spreading the word about what is possible in your view with the Overnight AI Educator method. However, Matt and Engagers, as you know, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over.
Hey, Engagers, and thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And since you're interested in this world of creating motivation, engagement, loyalty using game-inspired solutions, how about you join us on our free online community at Professor Game on School? You can find the link right below in the description, but the main thing is to click there, join us. It's a platform called School. It's for free, and you'll find plenty of resources there. We'll be up to date with everything that we're doing, any opportunities that we might have for you. And of course, before you go on to your next mission, before you click continue, please remember to subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.